Good morning, everyone. We're learning Mishna Eruvin, Parak Yud, chapter 10, Mishna Zayin, Mishna 7. Bar B'Shus Harabim, a pit that has an order that is in a public domain. Now, when you have this water hole or this water pit in the public domain, this water pit is typically going to be deep at least 10 tfachim, at least 10 fists, handbreadths deep. And the area below is going to be 4 by 4 fists. If so, that hole itself is a private domain. It's an area of 4 by 4. It's got walls that are 10 high. You have a private domain. So there's literally a private domain there in the middle of the public domain. And were you to stand in the public domain and bring up water from the pit into the public domain, you'd be transferring from a private domain to a public domain, which is a Torah prohibition of transferring of Hatzah. Now, in this case, you have Bar B'Shus Harabim, you have this water pit in the public domain. Chulyasa means it has an embankment of dirt, a pile of dirt around it. It's an embankment. And that embankment itself is 10 tfachim high. Now, Chaloin Sha'al Gabav, there is a window that is on top. There's a window that overlooks this water pit. And you have the ability now to, let's say, you can toss a pail that goes from the window from your house into the water pit, and you're going to bring up water. So the Mishnah says that you can do that. Through the window that is above, you would be able to fill it up on Shabbos. Now, the point here is like this. It's not like this water pit is right under the window. There's actually an area of 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim between the window and the water pit. With about a foot or so between. And because of that, you actually have an area of Rishus Harabim, of the public domain, between the water hole and your window. And you're not allowed to transfer from a private domain to another private domain through a public domain. If I'm in a private domain, I pick up an article, I throw it through a public domain, and it lands in a private domain. I didn't transfer from a private domain to a public domain. I transferred from private to a private. But since it went through the public domain, I'm not allowed to do that. So that would seemingly is what's happening. You're drawing the water from a private domain, you're taking it over the public domain and then into the private domain. But the reason that's not a problem here is because, as the Mishnah says, the chulya, the embankment, is 10 tefachim high. That means when you draw the water beyond the embankment, that water is now higher than 10 tefachim off the ground of the public domain, right? I got to bring it above the embankment. That means I already have to have it above 10 tefachim. And then I just bring it I'm going to cross over the Rishus Harabim, the public domain, but I'm going to be 10 tefachim above. And as we learned until now, the airspace of Rishus Harabim only goes up to 10 tefachim. At 10 tefachim, it's now no more a public domain. It's called Makom P'tur. It's called a place of exemption. It's an area that's transferring to and from. This is airspace, but Makom P'tur is an area that there's no problem transferring from any domain into it. So in this case, it comes out, since I have to bring the water above 10 tefachim from the ground, then it comes out, I'm going from a private domain through a Makom P'tur, through a place of exemption, to the house, which is a private domain. Now, the window of the house is also 10 tefachim off the ground, because if it's lower, then it's going to come out that you're lowering the pail, the water, lower back into the airspace of the Rishus Harabim to get into your house. That's going to be a problem. But since the window is also above 10 tefachim from the ground, it's above 10 tefachim of the Rishus Harabim ground. At the end, so it comes out that now the water is going from the private domain of the water pit through the airspace, which is Makom P'tur, because it's above 10 tefachim from the ground, and then into the house. So there's no problem. And again, if this embankment, right, wasn't going to be 10 tefachim high, that means the water is going to be brought out from the water pit and won't have to be above 10 tefachim. And then you're not allowed to do it. Okay, so that's the first case in the Mishnah with the water pit. Now we have another case. Ashba B'Shus Harabim. An ashba is a trash heap in the public domain. Gavoya Asara Tfachim. It's 10 tfachim high. So this heap is 10 tfachim high off the ground. On top, it is 4 by 4 tfachim. the top of this garbage heap is a public domain. So you got this garbage heap in the middle of the public domain. Halachically, it's a private domain. Now, Gavaya Sarat Tvachim is high 10 Tvachim. Chaloin Sha'al Gabov. The window, you have a window that is again above it. Shayfchin L'Seicha, from that window above that overlooks it, you can pour in onto the Shayfchin L'Seicha Mayim b'Shabbos, you can pour water onto it on Shabbos. That means you've got wastewater in the house. You want to now toss the wastewater out of the house into the trash heap. That's what you want to do. Or even if it wasn't water, just that we're dealing with a case of a trash heap, wastewater would be the most common case. But whatever it is that you're throwing out from the window. Being that, again, we're talking about it's 10 tefachim high, so that when you toss the water from the window, and the window is 10 tefachim higher than the ground. So the window is 10 tefachim higher over the ground. The heap is 10 tefachim off the ground. So now when you toss the water doesn't have to go into the airspace of the Rishus Harabim. Both areas are high 10 tefachim above the ground. The water will stay 10 tefachim above the ground. So there's no problem, again, because it's going through Makom B'Torah, it's going through a place of exemption. So another example of this, since the window is high enough and the heap is high enough, the water that you throw, now again, if you throw water, some of the water is going to fall down below, you got a problem. But because we have a situation where the water could be thrown in a way that it just stays just goes through the Makom B'Torah, then you're allowed to do that. Then you're allowed to go in and throw from the house through the airspace above 10 tefachim over Rishus Harabim, which is Makom B'Torah, place of exemption, onto the top of the trash heap that is a public domain. That is also a private domain. It's going from private to Makom B'Torah, place of exemption, to private. So that's how the Mishnah ends. But the Bartanura qualifies this last halacha about the garbage heap. It really depends what kind of garbage heap it is. There are public garbage heaps, and there are even private garbage heaps in the public domain. A public garbage heap doesn't get cleaned away that fast. And therefore, let me back up. If this garbage heap was not 10 tefachim high, it was 9 tefachim high, what status would it have? It wouldn't be a private domain. Private domain has to have walls of 10 tefachim. So if you have something that's less than 10 tefachim off the ground of the public domain, and its dimensions are 4 by 4, that's called a carmelis. A carmelis, as we've been discussing, is an area that, according to rabbinic law, you're not allowed to transfer from or into, whether from the private to the carmelis or the public to the carmelis. Carmelis is a forbidden area. So if this trash heap is going to be less than 10 tefachim high off the ground, then you have a carmelis, which would mean that then you're throwing the water from the public domain. You're throwing the water from your house, which is a private domain, and it's landing in a carmelis. Yet you can't do. Even if it's gonna go into the carmelis, you can't do that. Even though at one point it may go through a Makom B'Torah, place of exemption, it's going to land up in a carmelis. Doesn't help you. At some point, it's going to go down into the area. It's going to go down into the carmelis. That you can't do. Now, you can't go ahead and throw from the window through a Makom B'Torah into the public domain if that would be possible. But the bottom line is, if it's going to land in a carmelis, it's not going to work. You can't transfer like that. That would be if the garbage heap. That's the garbage heap would be less than 10. Now, if let's say in the middle of Shabbos, when Shabbos began, the garbage heap was 10 tefachim high, and then somehow or another it got less than 10 tefachim on Shabbos. That means on Shabbos it became a carmelis. You wouldn't be able to throw the water there anymore. So now the thing is like this. If we're talking about the public garbage heap, and the public garbage heap, as they explain, right, it's not usually cleared away. Apparently it stays there for a while. And therefore, I don't have to be concerned. There's no real concern that at some point of Shabbos, perhaps somebody came and cleared it away, or at least lessened it from 10 tefachim high. But if it's a private garbage heap is something that the owner is going to lessen. He doesn't let it just sit there. At a certain point of time, he either clears it away or at least lessens some of it. So when we're talking about a private garbage heap, there is a possibility that even if on Shabbos it started as 10, by the time in the middle of Shabbos it can become 9. because the person who owns the garbage heap, it's possible he's going to clear some of it away. If so, the Chachamim said, even when you throw the water, even if you know at that point of time that it's 10 tvachim high, we don't let you do it onto a private garbage heap, because we're concerned that if you're going to be used to throwing the water from your house onto this garbage heap, you may do it even when it comes out that it's not 9 tvachim anymore, that 10 tvachim anymore. If you get used to doing this, we're concerned that it could happen that at a certain point of Shabbos, the owner cleared some of it away, and you're not paying attention to see whether it's 10 tvachim anymore because you're so used to just throwing the water there, and you're going to throw it there without realizing that it's not 10 tvachim anymore. You're throwing it into a carmelis. So therefore, when the Mishnah says that you can throw into a garbage heap, it's called a public garbage heap. It doesn't get cleared away. But if it's a private one that there's a potential to be cleared away on Shabbos, then you can't throw the water onto that kind of garbage heap, even if you know at that time that it's 10 tvachim high and it's not a carmelis. Have a wonderful day.